The question that inspired this entire conversation was, what do you know about a succubus? Now, it is the very belief in dark entities that creates them. The universe, the world as you experience it, is a reflection of what is going on within your mind. And your power lies in your ability to claim the power and to choose new perspectives. Hello, blessings. Today's conversation is one that was sparked up because someone asked, what do I know about succubus in one of my lives? And I resisted the temptation to answer there on the spot, although I did answer a little bit. But this idea of dark entities, even curses, dark energies, right? These are all interrelated terms. This is something I have quite a lot of experience with and quite a lot of opinions around, and I would really like to talk in depth about some of the concepts that's just going to pry this open and hopefully empower all of you today to realize that there is nothing to fear, and we'll empower you with some tools with dealing with any of these kinds of energies if they ever come along, if they ever come up. Let's start with a conversation around what the nature of the universe is, because I think this is very pertinent and very important in terms of understanding what dark entities are, ghosts, negative vibrations, curses, negative energy. So if we look at the universe is this expanding mass. It all started with, we could call it the Big Bang. Everything was condensed and then it's expanding outwards. And I often like to view this as a great breath. So the universe expands out, it collapses again, it goes back to nothingness, and then it expands out again. So there have been many universes. There are many multiple parallel universes as well. And so we really want to encourage you, and I know it's very difficult to see and to think in this way because our minds are very linear. The way we experience time is very linear. Things happened yesterday, for example, and that's behind us, right? That's the concept we have, and that the future is ahead, that's unfolding now. But of course we know scientifically that time is something collapsible and it's not real, and that everything is now, it's kind of like a spiral happening into this one moment. Yet the way our brains, our minds have organized the energies, right? The universe is this projection or hallucination or illusion created by our brains, which, it's like a simulation. So we're having this experience of time unfolding in this certain way, and we're part of this family, we live in this country, we have this nationality, we have gender, a name, an identity. All of that is not truth, but the experience is very real. And just because the experience is very real does not mean that that is the only version of truth. So I'm just trying to crack it all open for you a little bit here. The universe, the world as you experience it, is a reflection of what is going on within your mind. And that is created by this input of sensory data. Now we know sensory data is unreliable, right? We cannot see the full spectrum of light. We cannot see gamma rays. We cannot see UV rays. There are many, many parts of the spectrum of light that we are unable to see. Same with sound. Just to give one example, a dog whistle, right? You blow on a dog whistle, the dogs respond, but we cannot hear a thing. There are plenty of frequencies, sounds, smells, tastes, touch that we do not experience. Yet we take this sensory data, we process it through our thinking apparatus, and we filter that through our past experiences and what we've been taught, what we understand, what we believe, the way we frame the world. And then our minds, our brains create a hallucination, an illusion, according to all of that data, that input. We know for a fact that that is not the full truth. But it is our truth in that moment. It is the experience that we are having in that moment. It's difficult to wrap our minds around because our minds are literally not wired to understand beyond our linear existence. Let's think of another metaphor here. If you think of an anthill on the side of a road next to a highway, the ants as a system, right, they have their queen, they're all working hard, they've built this complex system, they're intelligent beings. And they have their own entire universe that they've created. They're collecting food, they're doing all the things that they need to do to run their community. No one would call them stupid. But do those ants have any concept of the complex system that runs alongside it, that highway? Because there we have this car highway and this human being existence. Like they're just this little speck, right? And beyond that is this whole other system. So my point is that beyond our earth, beyond our understanding, there's something greater, there's more. How many of you have watched Dr. Seuss? There's this existence where they all live on a speck of dust on like a dandelion flower or something, and there's this whole universe inside this speck. I think this is a wonderful metaphor for like this sense of understanding that there's more beyond what we can process in our worlds. And I just want to say, I don't mean any of this offensively, but as someone who has traveled extensively, the first time I packed my backpack and off I went, and I traveled by myself, and it was before the time of like Google Maps and smartphones and Google Translate, and I literally didn't even have a phone whenever I crossed a border. So, you know, you would go to a tourist's place or like a tourist shop, get a map, manually like navigate where you need to be. If you get lost, you actually ask someone for directions. Half the time people can't speak English. It was a different world then. And so I traveled, and sometimes it was very, very jarring, difficult, lonely, scary, but a lot of the time it was also incredibly powerful. And I can remember the first time that I came back to my hometown, and I tried to tell some of my friends about the experience I'd had, and some of those people still today have never even left their hometown. Their worlds remain this big, and until you can see there's a different way of existing, there's a different way of being, there's a different way of moving about your day, there's a different way of understanding and processing this or that, even within our world, it allows your mind to expand. But it takes time to allow in for more and more perspectives, wider perspectives. And the more I research into science, especially of course quantum physics, the more everything just collapses in on each other, and you realize that science speaks of spiritual truths. Now, not every scientist would agree with me on this. Of course, as a spiritual person, this is what I see, and there are multiple ways to see. You know, I have a good article if you're interested in it. You can reach out and I'll send you a link. I have a good article talking about how quantum physics really argues for psychic phenomena or supernatural ability or telepathy, because we are all connected. Science shows us this, And if you look at quantum entanglement, now, of course, this is going to just sound way out there because, most of us are not scientists, but quantum entanglement essentially talks about waves. When we think of Big Bang, everything condensed into one. Once waves have interfered with each other once, they remain connected even at really, really, really far distances. And that what affects this. Now, I think this is groundbreaking because we can understand that, well, one person's oppression is my oppression. And it's very difficult to wrap our minds around the paradoxes. Because here we are, right? I'm sitting here in this room. I'm in this body. I call myself Carla. And you're out there tuning in on your phones or computers or tablets or whatever in your bodies with your own names. And we're having this experience of being separate. Yet when we look smaller and smaller, when we look at the microcosm, you look closer and closer, Newtonian physics collapses, separation collapses, and we realize that strange and spooky things begin to happen. Even Einstein called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. And it's really fascinating because he was not satisfied with quantum physics because Newtonian physics completely collapses. And so many of us, our minds still function very Newtonian. It's very 1 + 1 = 2, this and then that, right? But even Einstein's theory of relativity tells us time is but a factor. So whether or not you understand what I'm saying, because it is confusing, and the paradox of we're connected, we're one, but separate. Having an experience, the experience is real, but it's an illusion. Like we're in a simulation, like if you're wearing a headset, you can have a real experience in a not real world. But that world is also real in so much in its own right. So this world, it's real, but it's also not real. Paradox. These strange, weird, collapsing, opposite things falling into each other. What I'd like for you to accept at this point is that things are not the way they appear, and that everything you perceive is more so a reflection of your psyche, your belief, your experiences, what you're thinking, what you're going through, than it is real life. I'm going to tap into the comments now, and then I'm going to move on to my next point. Where does God fit in? Everywhere. Everything. Like every single part of it is God. The expanding universe, the energy underlying all things. I also have a video on what is God, if you want to look that up also on my YouTube. We're literally in a ball of fire, spinning through space, and the solidity we perceive is an illusion. Matter is mostly empty space held together by invisible forces, exactly. It's just energy organizing, and the way that energy organizes in your realm is in accordance to your belief system. Like, this is the fundamental truth. When you shift the way you describe things, when you shift the way that you define things, you shift what you see. And that is how we have quantum leaps. Now, many of us are very stuck in our belief systems, right? Can be very, very challenging, but also it's easy. Does this knowledge help us to have a wider perspective in life? I mean, I think that's obvious. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, is broaden your perspective a little bit beyond the anthill that we've been learned to live within, to see a little bit beyond, like, there's more, that what we're perceiving is not quite what we've been thinking. Let's move on. Let's talk about the act of creation. I'll look through the lens of the Christian Bible for a moment, but it's not the only way to describe this. It's just, let's use it as a metaphor. But if we look at the book of Genesis, right, God used the word, and this is very important, the word, right? God used the word, and he said, let there be day, let there be night. And he separated out the darkness and the light. And he used the word to create the world, the universe. Now, if we were created in the image and the likeness of God, again, all metaphor, right? You can take it literally if you want. That's fine. But we've just talked about how what we experience is not literal. It's a real experience, but it's a simulation. And so how do we create and organize energy? It is the very act of naming, labeling, describing, defining things. So our very words that we choose, the power of affirmations, right? So many of you in the spiritual circles learn about power of affirmations. Why? Because you create using real vibration, because the words point the energy into a direction, right? Who was it that just told us about everything's mostly just empty space and energy? Because when you look at a molecule, at an atom, smaller, 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 we look and we discover it's just vibrating energy. It's just energy. What we perceive to be solid is not so solid. It's not solid at all. It's just the perception of solidity. And so it's our very definition of things that sort the energy, tell the energy where to go. You know, this is something I often say about spiritual systems, for example. If you believe in one religion wholly and fully, it becomes your truth. It is true for you. And it unfolds in that way even when you die, because you have organized the energy in that way. I often talk about the chakra system coming from the Vedas, the yogis of India. Very powerful, powerful system to work with. A very powerful and empowering way to organize the energy. Is it set in stone that it must be that way? No. Is it certainly a very sophisticated system, one of the best that I know of, and probably the reason why most spiritual teachers have adopted that system, because it is such a powerful way to sort the energy. And so my point here that I am making is that we can wear the lens of Christianity, the lens of Islam, the lens of Hinduism, the lens of the yogi, the lens of the cultic practitioner, the lens of a paganist practitioner. We can look through the lens of science, of psychology, we can look through the lens of book knowledge, and we can look through the lens of Newtonian physics. Every single lens is valid. Truth is a slippery, slippery slope. There is no one truth except that we are all connected, right? There are few absolute innate spiritual truths in this universe that we know, and it's the same truth that's been taught in all magical, sacred, spiritual practices, in different words, in different ways. But I will quote the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth, Egypt, right? As above, so below. What is this talking about? That mirror reflection that I'm talking about. Everything is a reflection, a projection. You look at people who are in the habit of blaming, out here, blaming everyone around them. Again, I'm not throwing shade on those people either. I'm sure every single one of us here has been in that mode of blame, myself included. I say this with love. But the only way to pull yourself out of that, to free yourself, is to realize the power that you hold in being able to create the world that you are reflecting. And it is by changing the inner universe that you can change the outer universe. All right, so what are some of the concepts that we have unpacked here? We create by organizing energy through the very act of categorizing, defining, labeling, naming. The world is a reflection. It's an illusion, but it's still a real experience. So we're not here to invalidate anyone's experiences. I've had many very real experiences in this simulation. It's real, but it's not real. the paradox. We could look at it as we're stuck, or we could look at it as we're playing in the playground of the universe. I think that, again, it's shifting the perspective. In a lot of Eastern philosophy, this idea of being in the cycle of reincarnation is seen as this imprisonment, and you want to break free from that and join back with the oneness. But in some ways, I don't necessarily find it useful. I think it's beautiful. We have so many chances for expansion and expression and learning and lessons and try-overs and redos, and to come back to love, to step into our power, to play with the magic, to become the cosmic child, to become the mage or the wizard or the witch, the magician, or the CEO, whatever it is you're wanting to be in your life, the energy worker, the healer, the connector. So many chances to redo. And I'm not going to say too much about this now, but when we understand on an individual level our small little lives, there's this reflection, but also that there's a collective energy, and that's the collective consciousness. So like the sum total of our consciousnesses is also creating like the global narrative. And we look at a lot of the horrific stuff unfolding in the global narrative at the moment. And on the one hand, we can say, oh, it's awful, everything's falling apart. Or on the other hand, we can say, well, this stuff's been going on for centuries and now it's bubbling up to the surface. And when things are being revealed, when things are showing themselves, they're doing so because we're ready to heal them. And the calling is to heal them. Real life demons showing up on the global stage at the moment for us to deal with. Right, so let's talk a little bit about the dark entities and the dark energies. Okay, so the universe is a mirror of your vibration, your definitions, your belief systems, or your paranoias, your fears, your thought patterns, what you're focusing on. The question that inspired this entire conversation was, what do you know about a succubus? Now, I do feel it was necessary to explain all of that before we talk about what is a succubus. Because a succubus is not some separate entity, dark force out there coming to attack you. The definition is a female demon who comes to prey mostly on men and sucks their life force energy by having sexual relations with them at night. So often they'll dream about this. And, in some ways we can talk about this just as a demonization of the archetype of the feminine, which of course we know in terms of like our age-old patriarchy narrative and the rise of the feminine, the sacred feminine. And this is not really what the conversation is about, but that's essentially the definition of a succubus. Does that very definition create the succubus? We separate the energy out by creating the divisions. So we think of the expanding universe, we separate it all out, separating, defining, separating, expanding. A new thought expands the universe, and another new thought expands the universe, and another word is invented here, and a definition is invented there, and so it expands. And where you're focusing, where you're looking, I have had very real experiences with demons, many times, many different demons. I've learned how to slay demons. I know how to work with demons. When I have a client who has a demon or a curse, I can pick it up. I know how to break them. I know how to work with that energy. It is real experiences. But what is real? Because I've already explained to you that everything is an illusion. It is the very belief in dark entities that creates them. And what do they feed off of? Your fear, right? These are the important keys. They feed off fear. If you embed yourself in faith, trust, and love, and a feeling of safety, no demon nor curse can touch you. And if you're going through a bad time, say you're depressed and you start to get paranoid and there's all sorts of weird things happening, mental cycles, it happens to the best of us, that's okay too. Let's say you do get a dark entity, or you do perceive a curse over you. You're the one who allowed it in. Take your power back. You're the one who can break it. How many of you have experienced those spiritual scammers on social media who reach out and they're like, oh, the ancestors led me to reach out to you. You have such a strong energy. And then they like reel you in and they chat. And they're like, oh, I can tell, you have this really powerful energy, but someone's put a curse on you. They place the curse on you by saying that. And you can either deny or accept it. And of course, if you go, oh no, and then you give them money, then you've accepted the curse. And of course, they're the only ones that can break the curse. Nonsense. You can break the curse just simply by not even giving it any focus, energy, paranoia, fear. It's just nothing. Those people only have power in so much as you give them power through your fear. And of course, we can put real curses on other people. Some people have very strong willpower. Some people have very strong spiritual power and have stronger ability to place curses over people and send negative energies or negative entities. Most of the scammers, not so much. They're not very powerful. Let me tell you, the very powerful people are not sitting on social media trying to scam people. There are people who have stronger ability. And let me tell you, every single one of you here has cursed someone before, because every single negative thought that you have about someone else, or every single ill wish that you've ever had about someone else, that is a curse. And sometimes those curses, those energies, they turn into entities and create a life outside of themselves until someone transmutes them into the light. Every single one of you has a light living inside of you, and all you need to do is just shine that light from your heart and they will dissolve. And if you do not feel powerful enough to do that work yourself, you can call on a powerful being, and your belief system will dictate who is the powerful being that you call upon. So if it's powerful for you to work with Jesus Christ and Mother Mary and the Holy Spirit and the Christian cross, and you pray to those entities and you call them in, that works. It doesn't work if you don't believe in it. It only works if you believe in it. Okay? If you believe in the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, who's heard of that one? Then you can call in the Flying Spaghetti Monster. If you believe in Archangel Michael, if you believe in Allah, it's all the same energy. You are that energy as well. But your belief system will dictate the route that you need to take in order to break any curse and dissolve any demon. Now, of course, if you're not feeling very confident and faithful in your own energy, it might be useful to work with a psychic such as myself, or some kind of shaman or energy healer or energy worker that you do have faith in, because that's going to help your belief system. You are the key. So what do you believe? And it's okay to take your time shifting that belief system. All right, let's tap in a little bit with your comments and see what's coming through here. Cults, that's a very good example of where people with a very powerful spiritual energy work with dark entities, dark energies and curses and gain a lot of power. And that is something a little bit more tricky. Okay, all the same rules still apply, but as a normal human being who maybe just meditates a little bit and doesn't have a very strong spiritual power, you all have the ability to manifest that spiritual power. But we're talking about someone who already has a strong spiritual power and is using it in a negative way. right? So some people can take power over you and place curse on you and manipulate you, etc., etc. But there is nothing that you cannot free yourself from. And 99% of you are never going to meet one of those people. Fear, curses, and dark energy are brought into your life by self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so that's where I was. Wonderful. I watch a fiction where attachment manifests as entity, and the entity wishes actually to be freed. It sounds very, very accurate in terms of how energy works. Thought forms can turn into entities 100%, and of course everything wants to go back to the light. Of course, because in some ways they're a prisoner to that negative energy as well. That is why Abraham Hicks talks about the law of deliberate creation. Absolutely, because we all create on default. We inadvertently create so much for ourselves and others, so better to be aware. Absolutely. So let's talk about where the tradition of demonology comes from. It essentially really took roots and became this whole thing during the witch hunts. And I'm going to say the witch hunts was essentially the persecution of powerful women. A lot of the women who were persecuted in witch hunts were midwives, medicine women, herbalists, women who decided to not get married and live in the forest in communes of other women, women who weren't interested in men, women who didn't bow down to men. And in witch hunting times is when demonology became this like absolute obsession. And a lot of this idea of what demons were was linked in with the nature spirits that women were working with. So let's look at the origin of the word. And I talked about how words is what creates and separates out the energy. And then as the definitions shift, they turn into different things, right? So demon comes from the Greek word daemon, which was a word for a guiding spirit and lesser deities. Judaism and Christianity changed this word in one of the translations of the Jewish religious texts. And we began to use the word demon to refer to false gods or evil entities, i.e. non-Christian entities, nature entities. And then Christianity used it to refer to the fallen angels and even the spirits of nature and pagan deities. Let's think for a second of the image of the devil. How often have you seen the image of the devil as a fawn, a horned fawn? Because the fawn with the horns is the pagan god Pan of the cultic nature-based religions. This is hands down, straight up, a demonization of the old gods. And if we look back at the root of this, let's call it cancer on the earth of very traumatic colonialism. Who were the original ones who set up the colonialist narrative that we see still playing out today, that has left so many indigenous nations ravaged, scarred, the lands scarred, the traditions, the identities scarred? It all started with that Roman Empire. And that blueprint, the Roman Empire across Europe, persecuting all of the pagan religions of Europe, the cults, the Druids, there were a number of them. That's the blueprint. And it was the demonization of their gods and the Christianizing as part of the colonialism, bringing them over to Christianity. Now again, I'm not saying Christianity is bad, I'm saying it was used in a bad way. Okay? Just to be clear, I think that there is still beautiful truth in all religions. But we can take spiritual power and we can use it in a way that's negative, right? In a way that's patriarchal, out of balance, because we're definitely not throwing shade either on the masculine. The masculine is necessary, beautiful, wonderful, amazing when in balance with the feminine. when in harmony with the feminine. Any oppression of another is an oppression of the self. So we're not here to demonize men either. We're not here to demonize anyone. We're here to de-demonize and to talk about how this all began. So what really is a demon? Your very definition or idea of this demonic dark entity is what creates it. And it is but a reflection of your fear, your paranoia, your lack of trust, your lack of connection to roots and self and nature, your forgotten connection to your ancestry, to your gods of old. Perhaps they are angry with you. I'm being facetious. Let's look at another aspect of this idea of demon and devil. Let's look at the archetype. Let's look through a psychological lens. Let's look at the archetype in the tarot, right? The devil card represents fear, ego, and entrapment. The entrapment of mind, thought, and definition. And how interesting it is to reflect on that in terms of the narratives we've just woven through. There is no scary devil, hell, demon. You can have a very real experience of that, of course. Not denying those experiences. I've had many. But at some point I had to admit that was a projection of my own psyche. While very real, it was also me. Because are we not just one soul, one thing coming back to quantum entanglement? Big Bang, one entity experiencing itself, expanding outwards, separating the energy out, defining things, redefining things. And sometimes the way we're defining things is just not very empowering. Sometimes it is. And we have so many chances to redefine, to bring in a new definition. Your power is within you, because within you is connected to the entire universe and beyond that universe, beyond the anthill. And your power lies in your ability to claim the power and to choose new perspectives. So how do we deal with negative entities if they come up? How do we deal with curses if they come up? What are some practical tools that we can bring in? Visualize light, bring in a power symbol. If for you the Christian cross is empowering, use that. If for you it's empowering to invoke the Arabic of the Quran and invoke the energy of Allah, then use that. Very, very powerful. If you want to use Sanskrit mantras, if you know about that, you can use that. If you want to bring in the symbol of the Egyptian Ankh, or if you want to work with the pentacle, the five-pointed star in a circle of pagan religions, which of course has often been called a mark of the demon, but of course anyone who has looked into Wicca or pagan religions understands that this is just a representation of the five elements: earth, water, air, fire, and of course ether or spirit. And it's the calling in of those elements and the containing of that power. So it's a protection symbol, it's a power symbol. There are many symbols you can work with. So you can visualize that symbol coming over the thing, you can send light to it, you can call in a deity or an energy that you work with. You can obviously call in a person to aid and to help you. You can work with prayer, power of words, right? Step into trust. But the real trick is shifting your belief, because when you believe it is broken and it is no longer something to worry about, then that is the truth. How do we clear a space? So many people in the spiritual world, they know about things like, use holy water, burn sacred herbs, use certain incantations, and use a spell. But some of the less spoken about ones is like laughter, a witch's cackle, can clear a space, can literally kill a demon, can literally break a curse. You just laugh. Because laughter, oh, it's so powerful. Anyone who's ever listened to children playing and laughing knows how powerful laughter is. It's incredible. Another one that people don't talk about enough is literally just clean the space. Throw away broken things, throw away old things, or fix broken things, and clean. Literally clean. If you literally sing while you clean and you bring in good energy while you clean, play some empowering music, get all the dust out. This is one of the best ways to clear energy. No place for the demon to hide if you get rid of all the dust. At this point, I have spoken about all of the points I needed to make in terms of like really just giving you those tools. So I'm going to tap into some of the comments, and if there's any questions, I'll address those. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Well, this is also just very good sacred spiritual hygiene, darlings, and good for your willpower as well. Be impeccable with your word, absolutely. Because if you're weak with your word, you're essentially saying to the universe, I'm not a powerful creator. So even something as simple as like, if you say, I'm going to wash the dishes, and then you put it off for 4 days, you're just literally saying, I'm weak. That you're setting yourself up for being a weak manifester. So if you say, I'm going to wash the dishes, get up and wash the dishes. Because then you say to the universe, what I say is. So that when you want to break a curse or call in an energy and you say, Archangel Michael, please will you come through? I invite you into the space, help me to cleanse. Archangel Michael will come because you are impeccable with your word. Very, very good. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. 2, don't take anything personally. 3, don't make assumptions. And 4, always do your best. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So demon essentially means spirit, but gets changed into becoming evil spirit. Did I get this part right? Absolutely. Demon essentially means spirit, yes. And it was used by Christianity as like a us versus them kind of energy, this separation energy, right? Because it's not our spirit, according to that version of Christianity. At least that controlling narrative version of Christianity. The roots, the patriarchal, the colonialism. We're talking about Christianity in the context of being a tool for colonialism, not the sacred roots of it. Yes, you can't control the masses without a boogeyman. They need to create a villain. I once received laughter as a gift. Now I can see how that is powerful. There we go. Yes. Author Don Miguel Ruiz draws from the teachings of the indigenous Toltec culture in Mexico. Exactly what Carla was talking about. The ancient BIPOC wisdom. May we heal this narrative. And may we all use whatever privilege we have to do not only the inner healing, but also some of the outer work as a collective. If you accept all of the teachings that I've just shared with you, you'll understand and accept that whatever dark entity you're perceiving is a reflection of you. And that can be a hard pill to swallow if you've got an open third eye and you're seeing weird shadow beings hanging around. But it's okay, darlings. We are also the darkness. We are also the darkness. And that darkness also has to come home and integrate. And when you allow it to come home and integrate, you realize it's not so scary. It's just a guiding spirit. Just showing you something you've locked away for a long time. Have a blessed now. Love ya.